Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Coach's Corner, where Coach Dave Serrano and I interact and discuss not only college baseball, but all things youth baseball, travel baseball, high school baseball, with college coaches from around the country, all levels, all divisions, so that we can share with you as student athletes and families and help you make informed decisions. Today's guest is from my neck of the woods, what we call the frozen tundra of New England. JP Pyne has been not only an elite player in the local Massachusetts area, but as well as an elite college coach with stops at Daniel Webster and now Amherst College, in the infamous NESCAC conference, which is probably the most prestigious academic athletic Division III conference in the country. So JP, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Walter. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, very, very welcome. And, this is something that Dave and I really enjoy, getting to know different coaches from across the country, because we get to share and educate families and parents. You know what? I'll start this off. A lot of parents are unfamiliar with the NESCAC. And I know from multiple sports, I know basketball at Amherst has competed against Holy Cross, a Division I school. I know that I feel that conference is equivalent, or is called affectionately, the Little Ivies. Can you share with parents a little bit about how competitive the landscape is within Division III in New England, and especially the NESCAC conference?
Well, I mean, it is a great conference. I mean, it's a collection of. I don't know if we love the word elite just because it has so many different sort of connotations now, but it's probably the most apt way to describe the education. Certainly at Amherst College, and the way that sort of plays out is every year the acceptance rate is somewhere between 7 and 10%, and I think every single year that I've been here, we've set a record for applications, in upwards of 16, 17, 18,000 applications. So competitive is underselling it a little bit when it comes to purely the admissions process. And you're right, athletically, it's a conference where member institutions across all sports aspire to compete at the national level. I think if I'm correct, and the NESCAC also, following a little bit of the lead from the Ivies, we're late to the NCAA tournament party. So I think I want to say it was 94. I may be wrong on that, where they started to compete at the NCAA tournament level. But at Amherst, there's been 14 national championships in that span. Our women's basketball team has 3. Our men's basketball team has 2. Our soccer team, men's soccer, has 1. Our women's hockey team. So across all sports, across everything, it's super competitive, and it's really fun because you're doing that with really, really high level academic student athletes.
Coach, it's a pleasure to have you on. One of Walter's and I's goal is to educate and inform families as much as we can. We talk a lot. We get a lot of questions about the recruiting process at the Division III level at Amherst. Explain to our listeners the recruiting process and maybe the timeline that a school like yours, when you guys start recruiting an athlete to your school from an academic standpoint and the athletic standpoint.
Sure. So it's probably similar to anyone else from an evaluation standpoint. So whenever you get the opportunity to see and evaluate a student athlete, you take that chance. So I have folders in my office, in my computer, on 2024, certainly 2025s, class of 2026s. I think I even, in this day and age, and there may be some regulation coming, who knows, but I think I have a folder of 2027s, just because if somebody reaches out, I like to just maintain a file of it. So whenever you get the opportunity to evaluate somebody, you take it. And so when our process really starts is June 15, going into their senior year, we can do, and this is a NESCAC rule, we can submit an academic pre-read. And what that does is we get a certain set of documentation, and we send that up to admissions. So and we have an admissions liaison. We have an amazing guy who works with us like all the time. And they try by July 1st, they can start returning academic pre-reads. And that pre-read essentially gauges admissibility. And so once we know who's admissible, we're given the way I put it, the easiest way to understand for me is we're given a budget of support. So I might be told you're allowed to support up to 7. And so then it turns into being a baseball coach. And actually the analogy that I use is it's almost like being an NFL general manager. You get 7 draft picks. You got to get it right. If you get it right, you can be really good. You can experience what like Walter said, like we've had the pleasure of experiencing for the last 20, 25 years up here in New England. If you get it wrong, you can look like, some other NFL franchises. So, so that's the way that I look at it. And then the timeline is once we get that academic pre-read back, we've done our due diligence. Pretty much, I tried personally to work with the student athlete to understand their timeline. You mentioned the Ivies. We work probably like 6 months to a year behind them. But both of us leave room for that late bloomer. I was a late bloomer. And so I try to work with a student athlete that we're interested in to establish a timeline. Having said that, we have some parameters that we have to work with, right? So November 1st is our early decision deadline. We really like, if at all possible, to have our class buttoned up by November 1st. If we can't do that, we're comfortable. In more than 1 year here, I have gone into regular decision with a spot of support. And I do that very comfortably. Like I said, the late bloomer or the guy that really has his hopes pinned on going to fill in the blank, and it didn't work out either from an elite admission standpoint or a baseball standpoint. And so now that person is available. So I'm comfortable going in to regular decision. But we don't always necessarily plan for that. So it depends on the amount of support that I have. And it's not an annual thing. It actually was prior to COVID. It was 8-7. And then with the disruption of COVID, it's altered it. So it's kind of been a year-to-year thing for me where I sit down with my boss and say, here's my situation. Here's what I really need. Here's what I really want. And we usually meet somewhere in the middle.
Okay, thank you.
So JP, a lot of parents, and this is we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive and use some terminology that a lot of parents may not be familiar with. And by that, I mean like A band, B band, C band. Does Amherst use that? When you say support 7 student athletes, I want to do a little bit deeper on that. And then I also want to make sure that parents understand what are some of the parameters. Maybe you want to generalize a little bit with regard to test scores. Are they mandatory? Is there a certain score you like? GPA, just so parents have a good understanding of what, not only NESCAC, but Amherst in particular uses as a academic foundation and as you from an athletic perspective.
Yeah. So the banding system is in place. And that, again, that's a NESCAC rule. That's not an Amherst thing. There aren't, so within each institution, as far as I understand it, the criteria for those bands are institutional. So what's what's one way at Amherst is potentially something very different at Tufts, very different at Colby, very different at Wesleyan. So like it's I can't go super specific into all of those things. But the way that it does work is, excuse me, yeah. So when you get that pre-read back, we do use a banding system, which is, again, an A band is sort of that very tippity top of the academic food chain. That's I'm hesitant to say they're admissible anywhere, but they probably are, if not admissible everywhere, pretty darn close, right? And then obviously, right, so the B band is a little bit below that, and a C band is below that. Now, we're also regulated within the conference based on the number of sports that you sponsor. And this is also sort of like the Wizard of Oz thing, right? Nobody's really ever gotten a look behind the curtain. I don't know how many B bands we get, institutional B bands. I don't know. I know what I have gotten at times, and so I've always been fairly limited with C bands. I think sometimes the C bands that I have gotten have been somebody else's that they didn't use, which happens more than you would think. Same thing with a B band. Like you could be floating around and getting close to regular or to early decision and say, this kid's. And the other thing too, sometimes that admissions pre-read will come back. They'll be, we call them cusp kids, where a kid's on the cusp of a B and a C. How he finishes that semester or that quarter is going to be the difference. If he slides to a B, I can take him. If he hangs down to a C, I can't. So there are some intricacies to it, and we are test optional. And that's as of COVID, sort of that was an impact. And what they've decided, and I think it's really, really, a good decision, is go through an entire cycle, like at least a 4-year cycle of an entire student body that's in that test optional umbrella. And so the way that it works for us is if you submit test scores, admissions is going to evaluate them with the same scrutiny that they would prior to. So it's not like, hey, they can only help you. Like, oh, you got a 35 on the ACT. Or I mean, that's a bad example because you'd probably throw that one in. I mean, I would. But if somebody got like again, I'm super reluctant to throw out actuals here, but like if somebody got a 30 on the ACT, the school's not going to evaluate them and then say like, and hey, as a bonus, we're going to look at this. It doesn't really help you. It doesn't really hurt you. Like we're going to kick it. They're going to look at it really closely. And so we've sort of had an interesting time navigating that, because I'll be sitting there with a student athlete and they'll say to me, I got a 31 on the ACT. Should I submit it? And that's really not the place that we have. It's not my position to say like yes or no. So I try to be kind of creative with the way that we did have a young man submit that and it didn't really help him, but could be very different for you. So the test optional piece has been interesting here. I know when I was at Clark University, it was test optional and they were like, hey, they can only help you. Like they're not like, send them in, go ahead. You don't have to strategize your application package. Send us everything. That's like the kicker. And if you got great SATs, boom, that's only going to help you. If you didn't do so well, don't worry about it. So it's different here. And part of that might be just because it's only been happening here for a couple of years. So I think everyone, including admissions, who's been great to work with on all this stuff, it's still an evolving process. And so the banding thing, I get that question a lot, and I get compare it to like the Ivy League where they do the likely letters. That's sort of cut and dry, right? Ours is like you fall into this window and it comes down to whether or not I have it, not whether or not the school has it. And so it makes it a little probably more complicated than anybody would like, but that's the way that it works. And so we just do our best, and we try to be, I try to be as transparent as possible with our families so they understand exactly what's going on throughout that process.
Coach, we live in an era now where through travel ball and the recruitment, a lot of the mentality is D1 or bust in families' minds and in players' minds. I, as a former coach, believe in realistic opportunities. And I've always felt being part of a team, being part of an organization is for personal growth, professional growth, learning how to be part of a team and sacrifice. I'm going to give you the stage for a second. Explain to everybody listening why the Amherst Mammoths is such a great opportunity for somebody to get an opportunity to continue your career and be part of a team and an organization.
Well, that's a great setup, Dave. I appreciate that. Amherst College is a brand in and of itself that I think nationwide and beyond is recognizable, certainly in the academic circles. So thankfully, I don't have to do a ton of salesmanship when it comes to our academics. But you're right. We compete against Division I schools all the time. We compete in the recruiting realm. We compete against that. We compete against the Patriot League. We compete against. In my time here, we've competed against some Power Fives just because of what our academic brand, what it stands for. And so, some of the interesting things that are specific about our program that I always try to highlight with people. From a baseball standpoint, we are the oldest college baseball program in the country. We won the first college baseball game against Williams in 1859, and that's been a fun rivalry ever since. And so when it comes to history and tradition, it's kind of tough to beat us, right? So when you're the first ones out there, but the thing about our program, I think there's such a balance between the academics and the athletics here. The NESCAC is starting to evolve too. Like there's conversations about non-traditional season, which we haven't had. It's funny to call it a traditional, non-traditional sense, but we've never had coach-led fall baseball, and they're talking about that now. I don't know for sure that it's going to happen, but we're optimistic as a coaching group. But our people, the thing that I sort of sell to our recruits is, first of all, the world-class education. And then the next piece that makes this place so amazing, in my opinion, here is our alumni group and what they do for our student athletes. I think sets us apart from a lot of our competitors. So my one thing that I say, and there's some recruits, potential student athletes, guys that are listening to this, that maybe they'll hear this directly in my office someday. But if there's one used car salesman sort of spiel that I give, it's if you graduate with a degree from Amherst College, you're on a pathway to do whatever you want to do in with your life, whatever you want to do. If you graduate with a degree from Amherst College and you play baseball, you're on a pathway to do whatever you want to do with the rest of your life. And there's an army of people out there that want to help you reach those goals. And that to me is something that, and again, that's if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a lawyer, if you want to be in finance, if you want to be in Silicon Valley, like whatever you want to do in politics, whatever it is, in baseball. I mean, we have, excuse me, we talk about it. We've had our three general managers, in the modern era, and our impact on professional baseball. At one point, this was just before COVID, but at one point, I want to say 25 out of the 30 big league clubs had an Amherst alum working in either scouting, player development, data and analytics, you name it. And so the impact on professional baseball is there. We've had guys go play in the big leagues too, for sure. And so there's an awful lot that is attached to this program. But you know, I always tell everyone that comes here, if you're good enough to play at the next level at Amherst College, you're going to get that opportunity. However, if your goal is flatly to go play at the next level, there's 1,000 places that are better for you to go to, and that sort of worked out really well for us.
Well, I want to add this. I think that's really vital what you said, because as a parent, when you allow your son or daughter, in some circumstances of women's sports, to make a choice of their school, you're hoping that they're making a choice for their life, not just for sports. And we all know, I mean, Walter and I and yourself, I've seen many great players come through college, and the small percentage that make it a life for the rest of their life is very small. So when they walk out the doors of the college that they spent their 4 or 5 years at, you want them to be able to be successful in life. And I think what you just said is very valuable, with everything of the lawyers and the people in finance. And if you want a Major League Baseball career, there's how many Amherst guys have been general managers. That is success. And a lot of people judge success off of the results on a field. But at the end of the day, those percentages are too small. So I appreciate you answering it that way, because that's why opportunities like this are great for student athletes.
Yeah, and that's sort of the way that we put it to them, is think about it in terms of the next 40 years, not just the next.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things in one of those general managers is Dan Duquette, who one could argue was largely responsible for ending the curse of the Babe in 2004. Duke is widely known in the New England circles, formerly of the Montreal Expos, and then responsible for Manny Ramirez and Pedro Martinez. Following up, JP, on that topic about competing with Power Fives, I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive, because I hear from parents all over the country, as does Dave. You know, when we're talking about the Vanderbilts, the Dukes, the Stanfords, you know, let's say UNC, Wake Forest, etc., one could argue that Amherst is actually, from an academic perspective, is actually a higher rated, or at least perceived a higher rated, ranked, whatever word we're going to use. So academically, the NESCAC and Amherst in particular can compete literally with any college in the country, including the Ivies, correct?
Yeah, I think depending on what rating system you go by, and if it's, you know, there's so many nowadays, right? But, you know, whether it's U.S. News and World Report or, you know, the higher ed, you know, there's just so many. But, you know, depends. I mean, we've been ranked the #1 liberal arts college in the country, the #2. It's sort of always this fight with Williams on the field and in those rankings. But yeah, I mean, I would say, like, we've you know, I can tell you this, when it comes to recruiting, if I'm talking to a potential student athlete and they are in deep with Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, I know I'm kind of we're gonna kind of make a decision about whether or not this is a fight that's worth staying in or not. Anybody else from an academic standpoint, we feel like we've, you know, got a puncher's chance, right? Like we're gonna be in it, and they're gonna choose what they're gonna choose. But yeah, I think we've heard from, you mentioned a lot of those schools. Another one like Northwestern, and you know, we lost a guy there a couple years ago that we thought it was really going to happen, and so yeah, it all depends, and I think that, you know, Dave, you mentioned the travel ball and the D1 or bust, and when I used to call it, you know, bumper sticker syndrome. You know, they wanted the right bumper sticker on the car. versus the best experience for their son or daughter. But those things are going to happen, and we just want to sort of be there to put it forward. And I think that I wouldn't say it's come full circle, but more and more I'm hearing from people that and programs that used to just funnel kids into the Power Fives and the group of six, whatever you want to call it, where they're saying like, hey, we want to take a step back from that and say, what's really best for these kids? And sometimes we overlook an opportunity chasing something that's maybe it's a little bit of a mirage. And I feel like there's been a little bit of a turn in the direction of, what's the best thing for us long term? What's the word that I probably use the most, and both of you have recruited for large chunks of your professional careers. The word that I probably use the most is fit. Is it a fit for you academically, socially? Can you thrive here? And if there's a fit, if Amherst is a fit for you athletically, academically, and socially, there's nowhere in the world that you're going to have a better experience. There's just too much here for you. And so that's just such an empowering feeling when you go on the recruiting circuit to know that what you have for a large segment of the kids, because we have to be in the academically vetted, we have to go fishing in the academically vetted lake.
Yes.
You can't go into the ocean, And so when we do that, we know what we have to offer, and that's a really empowering feeling.
Coach, you said a couple words that I want to repeat: mirage and opportunity. I looked up something knowing that we were going to have you on today. Currently, in the 299 teams of Division I baseball, there's 10,465 kids that are on rosters. Okay, so with how prevalent baseball is in America, there's more than 10,465 kids that are good baseball players. And why I think it's such a pleasure to have someone on of you explaining the Amherst in Division III is that these are opportunities that people are getting caught in the mirage and are letting go because of the fact that they're so tunnel vision on D1 or even when the rosters go to 40 man, it's only 11,960 that will be on rosters Division I. So what Coach is saying and what Walter and I are talking about, these are opportunities I think people are missing because they're letting their egos, the bumper sticker, the post on social media. We're letting those things get in the way instead of the opportunity, the wonderful opportunity for, like you said, the rest of their life.
Absolutely. And like I said, I feel like there has been, and I don't know, if it is COVID somehow or what, but I do feel like there is a little bit of that, of turning that corner, and maybe, and I'll admit, maybe that's because I've been at Amherst for the last 5 years, and so that's, I'm maybe just realizing or just noticing it because it's applicable more to us in some ways, but I do feel that way. I feel like it's turning back, and I think that's a great thing. And I was at a place. Walter, and when he brought me in here, mentioned Daniel Webster College. Daniel Webster College, I was there. I left in 2014. I went to the University of Maine for a couple of years. And a couple of years later, Daniel Webster College closed. And I think that's really sad, but I was not shocked. But I look back at it, and what you're saying, Dave, that place gave some really amazing kids a really amazing opportunity to have a really amazing experience. And those quite frankly, and I love those guys I stay in touch with. I saw two Daniel Webster guys. We played at MIT yesterday. And being in Boston for a couple hours, a couple of my guys came out. I had a great day yesterday. I had two Clark alums, two Daniel Webster alums, and three Amherst alums, and a colleague from when I was at St. Anselm, all at the game yesterday. It was awesome. And so And you see what they're doing now, and they're all successful. They all are. And so that experience is so personal. You can get caught up in what it means to go to X university, Division I, but it's such a personal thing. And if you go somewhere and you have a great experience, that's all that matters.
Yeah. I agree.
And I can reiterate, coaching at the Division III level, some of my former student athletes that I had the privilege of coaching, they're now in their, 38, 39, they have families of their own, successful, businessmen. And it's really a tremendous feeling. Several of those former student athletes were told they'd never be able to be successful in college. They didn't quite have what it took academically, but yet baseball was the vehicle that they were able to utilize, not only to motivate them, but to get them into college and create, routines and daily disciplines that they were able to take forward in their life, not only within the workplace, but obviously as now a parent and as a spouse. So I kind of really, truly, when JP talks of that, it really resonates with me. I really would like you from a domestic, the country as a whole doesn't have a lot of access to Division III schools. Texas might have Trinity, California has Pomona Fitzer, Wisconsin Whitewater, but the large majority of NCAA Division III schools are in that Northeast corridor. When you start talking about the College of New Jersey, from an athletic perspective, it's every bit as challenging. And the athletes that play at the Division III levels are every bit as good as many of the Division I schools, but it's the depth. Can you speak to that as far as from a coaching perspective as to the caliber of athlete that comes into your program as well as Division III?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's absolutely true, and I think that there's a couple of ways in Division III you can see that. And I look at growing up and competing at the Division III level. I played at St. Joseph, Maine. We were actually like NAIA at the end and Division III because you could there wasn't enough for both. There was. The traditional powers when I was playing were, and they still are. I don't want to take away, but Southern Maine, Eastern Connecticut, those were sort of the standard bearers in New England. They were winning national championships, and then Amherst College was a great program. Tufts forever. Case had that thing humming, and it's still humming. Paul Sfagnis is doing an amazing job there. Those were some great programs, and it was like looking back on it and talking to some of those coaches and evaluating it with some more sort of experience and knowledge, hopefully. You looked at it when I was up at the University of Maine, when we made some tough roster decisions, almost all of those guys, their move was to go to USM. And so Southern Maine was getting a lot of UMaine transfers, guys that were unhappy with their role, or were just sort of on the outside looking in roster-wise. Same thing with EastCon and UConn, right? So they're getting all of these guys. And I think it's funny now that in COVID, it's going the other way, right? So now the Division III guys go, or post-COVID, the Division III guys come and they have amazing careers. And now they're like the proving ground for the ACC and the Big East and all that. So I think that when I get asked a question from somebody who's maybe outside of the Division III realm or outside of New England or whatever, the most common question is, what does a weekend series in the NESCAC look like? And that's, my answer to that is always like, hey, on Friday, you're going to see a guy who's in the upper 80s, low 90s. On Saturday in game one, you're going to see a guy that's in the mid 80s to upper 80s. Or a lefty that's got some really good stuff and could be a contributor at a higher level. And then in game three, guys are going to go a couple of different ways. You could get that sort of touch and feel guy, righty or lefty, that's spotting up or whatever, or you could have that that bull in a china shop guy that's high velocity, doesn't really have command, that kind of thing. So you're getting that, and I was in the America East for 2 years, and I would describe it the exact same way. And so you're seeing that, and for us, we went down in Florida. We played some really good teams. You mentioned TCNJ. There's a couple of really good arms, and at the same time, we've talked to some travel ball guys, and people get frustrated. I understand this, and this is valid. Where somebody in travel ball is like, "Hey, I got this guy. He's a right-handed pitcher. He's 78 to 81, throws a curveball, has a changeup." And I said, like, look, I'm the last thing I try to be is a velocity snob, but we have 3 freshman arms contributing this year that are in the upper 80s to low 90s. That's not our threshold. That's not like our cutoff mark. But I had a coach say to us, like, "What, does that not work in Division III anymore? Like, who do you think you are?" And it's like, it does work. I mean, it does work. And we played against some really good teams in recent weeks in midweek games where guys that fit that exact description gave us fits. And so there is a place for everybody. I think that's what's different in Division III is there's a place for somebody if they want to play. And part of that comes back to there are some baseball programs or even just athletic departments in general that are an arm of enrollment. Like they just need to keep the doors open sometimes. And some of that might come back to what you mentioned, Walter, which is the concentration of schools in this region of the country. Like I hate to say this because I was at a great place that was a casualty of this, but there probably are just too many, right? There's probably too many colleges. And so I would love if all of them could survive and thrive. It hasn't really happened, right? And so there are a lot of coaches, and I was one of them for a number of years, that was under pressure to cultivate enrollment. And so again, it comes back to what Dave talked about, opportunity. Like, look, if all you're looking for is an opportunity to continue playing the game that you love, you're going to find it. You just got to keep looking. If you're looking to get to the next level, if you're looking to get the best degree possible, if you're looking to compete at the highest level of college baseball, then that changes a little bit. But if you're looking for something that, hey, I love to play, I'm a good student, I want to get a good degree, I want to be successful, I work hard at it, you're going to find something. It's out there. And again, it may not be something that people look at the bumper sticker on the car and pull you over and go, wow, do you play it? Fill in the blank. But you're going to have a great experience. And if that's what you're looking for, go get it.
I think you bring up a great point, Coach. I think a lot of student athletes don't do in high school is they don't go look at opportunities and see that. I think a lot of people, like that one person that said, hey, we got a guy 78, 80 that could help you win. And you say, no, we got better guys than that. High school players would be probably pretty surprised if they went to one of your games or a Division III game and realized, boy, I've got a lot of work to do to get on that field, even myself. So let me ask you this question. What is your roster limits, and do you have roster limits in the fall?
So again, we don't have a fall, a true non-traditional season. So all of that is student athlete led right now. So the answer to that is no. If we do get something, we still won't, because it'll almost be like a tryout period, if you will. Yeah. So my roster limit, and I feel really well supported on this at Amherst, is we are sort of in like this 30 to 32 range, and that's based upon a number of different factors. When I have had a compelling case to go beyond that, my athletic director has been very supportive of that. Don Falstick has been great. And he is, he said, why do you want to go beyond? And then what's your plan to get back into check, into where we really want you to be? And as long as I have that plan, he's been very supportive. And again, to piggyback on feeling supported, just I think somewhat coincidental. Also, I think the whole world's probably getting to this point. Next year, we're going to have sort of a COVID bubble. So all of our guys that took either a semester off or a full year to sort of let the world start turning again, they're all back, and it's like next year is when it hits. So typically on senior day, we're talking about 4 to 6 student athletes being recognized. Next year, you're going to need to pack a lunch if you come to senior day. I think we're going to have in excess of 12. So,
wow.
Which is probably normal for a lot of places, but for us, it's not. So everything sort of collected into the class of 24. And again, that disrupts my roster management, and so I was just really supported. And my boss told me, I don't want anybody to get cut because of COVID. And so I really appreciated that. And it may be a little tricky next year from a roster management in game and opportunity and evaluate all those things. But I really feel thankful that we're not having to say, hey, look, because of the pandemic, we're over our limit here. I got to let you go. I'm really thankful I don't have to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
JP, I want to say thank you for you. I know this is a busy, as it is for all of our coaches, but from the Division III perspective, midweek games, the travel component, you're traveling by bus, you're going to Boston from Amherst, you're all over the map this time of year. And I've been trying for a while now to get you to be able to join us. And I really think this has been an enlightening and informative opportunity for not only parents, but for student athletes to really understand not only do they have options, but they have elite options, both academically as well as athletically. And you really opened up some eyeballs and ears today, I believe. So I want to wish you the best of success. By the way, are you still with the Bravehearts and Peterman?
No, it's since I've been out here, I haven't done that, but I follow them closely. And Alex Dion's managing them, and he was my hitting coach my last year, and he does a great job. And that play and to see them thriving against all odds is a pretty cool thing.
Evidently, they're getting a new stadium, a new facility, or they're proposing one, I think is what I heard recently. So, but we are both tremendously grateful that you were able to share with us a little bit about Amherst College and the NESCAC, and most importantly, NCAA Division III. Best of luck along the way. And I look forward to catching up with you over the summer on your recruiting trails.
Thank you, guys. This was a pleasure, and thank you for the service that you do for all those families out there. This is a very interesting process, and with the exception of the transfer portal, you only really get one shot at it. So the more support families can have, my last thing that I would say is a message I try to give to our recruits when they're feeling the pressure of this is, at the end of the day, you should really take a minute to enjoy it. Like you have options because of your hard work, because of your academic acumen, because of your talents. Don't forget to enjoy the process a little bit. I know there's a lot of pressure, but you put yourself in a position based upon some of those things, and it's not supposed to be a 100% torturous process. So take a deep breath and enjoy it, and be thankful that you have options based on the hard work and the talent that you have.
Amen. I want to make sure that parents know that every Thursday, Coach Serrano and myself, we're here. We're talking baseball. We're talking college baseball and all that surrounds it. After talking with Coach Serrano, we've kind of decided we're going to start to include some different types of voices, such as clearinghouse and admissions and financial aid, so that you're getting a broader picture of the college experience as a whole to help inform and educate you in order to make better decisions. So please share the word. Let people know that we're here every Thursday evening, available to watch on YouTube, as well as lots of snippets that go out on various social media platforms. But be sure and follow us each and every Thursday. And if you like what we have going on here, please show some love and hit that like and subscribe button down below. Until next week, enjoy your week in baseball.